Greetings, pilots and passengers. Today I have a very interesting article to share with you, which was actually sent across to me by my dad. And it is about Antarctica and the fact that in Antarctica it has been reported that there is a UFO base there. And reports of there being a UFO base in Antarctica or the South Pole have been reported before. Now, this comes from a Navy flight engineer who served in the 90s, and he says that it was very prevalent that there was a secret base there that was really well hidden, and he saw this after flying over across it in a helicopter in a no-flight zone. The original article that I got sent was an Express article, but I did a bit of digging and found the original source from Linda Moulton Howe, and she actually interviewed Brian on her YouTube channel, and I'll include a link to that in the description box below. The article is on the Earth Files website, and it's titled Earth Files Viewer Feedback About Navy Flight Engineers' Report of Alien Presence in Antarctica. So a bit of background is that she received an email from Brian S., who is a retired US Navy flight engineer, and he had been wanting to tell her about what he saw in Antarctica for a very long time, and he finally got round to contacting her, and then Linda ended up interviewing him for her YouTube channel, and the interview's still up. So the article starts off with, talk among the flight crews was that there is a UFO base at South Pole, and some of the crew heard talk from some of the scientists working at the Pole of Extraterrestrial Biological Entities, or EBEs, working with and interacting with the scientists at the pole, air sampling, camp or large ice hole. And that was from Brian S., retired US Navy LC-130 flight engineer, Antarctic Development Squadron 6 or VXE-6. So this was written on August 20th, 2020, and Linda was originally contacted by Brian back in 2015, which is also when she did her interview as well, so it's been around for quite a few years. On January 2nd, 2015, I received this email from a retired Navy flight engineer called Brian S. about UFO related activity in Antarctica that he and his C-130 crew had knowledge about in 1990s. I have done extensive reporting before, but I am reprinting here the original raw email followed by current August 2020 comments from viewers of my weekly Earth Files YouTube channel, in which a rebroadcast about the Brian S. story has provoked some important supporting comments from 2020 viewers. So this is a map of Antarctica, marked by the US Navy flight engineer Brian, of all the strange areas where things were going on. So this is the email from Brian S., which was sent on January the 2nd, 2015. Hi Linda, my name is Brian S. I am a retired United States Navy LC-130 flight engineer that retired after 20 years of service in 1997. I've been wanting to write you for a long time about my experience on the Antarctic continent with flying vehicles that I was told not to talk about. I served part of my 20 years in the Navy with a squadron called Antarctic Development Squadron 6, or VXE-6 as it was also known. I served with this squadron from around 1983 till I retired in March of 1997. Being a flight engineer and flying more than 4,000 hours in that capacity, I've seen things that most people have not even imagined on the continent of Antarctica. The land there seems more alien than earthly. Our deployments to this land started in late September and ended the end of February every year until the squadron was decommissioned in 1999. That time of year was the summer season, when most of the science was done in warmer temperatures and 24 hours of daylight. It's interesting to hear from Brian how he describes Antarctica as quite alien-like rather than being earthly, and that we're hearing this again of people being told not to discuss what they see, especially in terms of military, to keep it all secretive if they see anything alien or out of this world, and basically hide it from public knowledge because we're not supposed to know about that. During my time in the squadron, I flew to almost every part of the Antarctic continent, including the South Pole, more than 300 times. McMurdo Station, which is 3.5 hours of flying time from the South Pole Station, was the point of squadron operation during our yearly deployments. Between these two stations is a mountain range called the Antarctica, with what we called severe clear weather from McMurdo to South Pole. The Antarctica are visible from the altitude which the aircraft flew, approximately 25,000 to 35,000 feet. On several flights to and from South Pole, our crew viewed air vehicles darting around the tops of Antarctica almost exactly in the same spot every time we would fly by and view them. This is very unusual for air traffic down there due to the fact that the only aircraft flying on the continent were our squadron aircraft. Every aircraft knew where the other aircraft were due to flight schedules being followed. Now that's really interesting to hear that he has seen these unidentified flying objects flying across the Transantarctic mountains, and that it's in the same spot every single time. Could suggest that there is a base there maybe, or there's a base nearby. Another unique issue with South Pole Station is that our aircraft was not allowed to fly over a certain area designated 5 miles from the South Pole Station. The reason stated was because of an air sampling camp in that area. This did not make any sense to any of us on the crew because on 2 different occasions we had to fly over this area. One time due to a medical evacuation of the Australian camp called Davis Camp. It was on the opposite side of the continent and we had to refuel at South Pole. And a direct course to this Davis camp was right over the air sampling station. So they've been told that they couldn't fly over a certain area because of this air sampling camp. Yet they've flown over the air sampling camp before to get to the Australian Davis camp. Things are being well hidden away and being kept confidential. The only thing we saw going over this South Pole camp was a very large hole going into the ice. You could fly one of our LC-130 into this thing. It was after this med-evac mission we were briefed by some spooks, intelligence agents I presumed, from Washington DC and told not to speak of the area we overflew. The other time we got close to the air sampling camp, we had navigation and electrical failures on the aircraft and was told to immediately depart the area and report to our squadron commanding officer when we returned to McMurdo. Needless to say, our pilot, aircraft commander, got his butt chewed and our crew was not on the South Pole supply run after that for over a month. This report of a huge hole in the ice kind of reminds me of Inner Earth and the reports that in the South Pole, I think it is, people have flown before and have actually flown inside the Earth and have described that within the Earth there is essentially another Earth and that there are giants and people and communities living within the Earth, and this is hidden from us also. In these reports of electrical failures, you could take that either way really. It could be to do with alien technology causing these electrical failures, but it could also be that the military is trying to prevent people from accessing that area, so are causing these electrical failures with aircraft to prevent them from reaching it. There were many other times we saw things that were out of the ordinary. One outlying camp, the Marie Birdland camp, we dropped scientists and their equipment at, was out of communication with McMurdo for 2 weeks. Our crew flew back to the camp to find out if the scientists were okay. We found no one there and no sign of any foul play. The radio was working fine as we called McMurdo to verify it working properly. We left the camp and flew back to McMurdo as ordered by our CO. A week later the scientists showed back up to the camp and called McMurdo for someone to come pick them up. Our crew got the flight back there to pick them, since we put them into that camp and we knew the terrain and location. None of the scientists would talk to any of the crew on the plane, and to me, they looked scared. As soon as we landed back at McMurdo, the scientists were put on another of our squadron aircraft and flown to Christchurch, New Zealand. We never heard about them again. Their equipment that we brought back from the camp was put in quarantine and shipped back to the US, escorted by the same spooks that debriefed us about our flyover of the air sample camp or large hole in the ice. I could go on and on about things and situations that I observed during my tour with VX-E6. Talk among the flight crews was that there is a UFO base at South Pole, and some of the crew heard talk from some of the scientists working at the pole of EBEs, working with and interacting of the scientists at that air sampling camp or large ice hole. Now that's really interesting to read about, is these missing scientists. We can only speculate what happened to the scientists, as no one really knows. It sounds like there is a base near the Marie Birdland base that the scientist went to that is classified and hidden away and has something to do with alien technology and UFOs. What these scientists saw shocked them, and it would explain why maybe they went missing for a couple of weeks, because they were at this other base. And the fact that they have never been heard from since, maybe they've seen something that they wasn't supposed to see. You know what happens when people disappear? They disappear for a reason. And these spooks, these intelligence officers that are debriefing people and are appearing out of the blue to make sure that people don't talk about anything, it reminds me of Men in Black. It really does remind me of Men in Black, because it sounds like that's what they are, Men in Black. Now Linda has included some of the comments on the interview with Brian on her YouTube channel from 2020, and they're quite interesting to look through, as it talks about how on Google Maps you can't really see much of the South Pole, and that a lot of it is basically covered up or hidden away. We'll have a little peek on Google Maps, don't you worry. So the first comment is from Michael Corley. Go to Google Earth and have a look at the South Pole, Antarctica area. Brian S. is talking about where he and his C-130 crew saw the hole in the ice. Guess what? You can look at some of the Antarctic region there, but that area near the South Pole is blacked out. You cannot view that area. Odd coincidence that the very same place that Brian S. speaks of you cannot see on Google Earth. Maybe something is going on down there. An anonymous user says, I was in VXE6 in the early 90s with Brian S., the Navy flight engineer who came forward to Linda about the craft and the entrance near the South Pole. It's real. They are there. George Rocher says, all the scientists were taken into the hole to see the other civilization that is there. So, Inner Earth. That reminds me of Inner Earth. When they called headquarters after they were returned to base camp, being gone for the week, they were threatened not to disclose any information or talk about anything they had seen, or there would be consequences to all of them and their families. They all had to sign top-secret documents and were all banned to pursue their science fields upon their return. That's the truth. That would make sense. Maybe they were forced to sign NDAs, essentially, or gag orders, I guess you could call them. And maybe they are still alive but are just living completely different lives, or maybe not, we just don't know. Sean Dwyer says, when I was working at McMurdo Station in 2001 to 2002, I was working the night shift. Got off work around 5 a.m. with a co-worker. We were sitting at a table in the cafeteria, just the two of us, no one else in there. Then US Senator McCain walks into the cafeteria to get breakfast. He sits down, and the bodyguard sees me staring in his direction and gives me the look of death. To this day, I have no idea why Senator McCain was there. Probably because he knows what's going on there and is checking it out, and that there are things going on there that he needs to monitor. Robert Smith says, I've actually heard this story from another one of the crew that dropped off the same team of scientists, and both stories are exactly the same. The crew member was told to keep his mouth shut, and he's retired also, and has chosen to speak out now. We are not alone. Anne-Marie Jones says, I come from a boating family ever since I was a child. My whole family enjoyed nothing but messing around with our boat down at the boat club, which is one of those hard-to-find places of old school members that were all ex-army and ex-navy, with a small clubhouse serving beer 24 hours to very little customers. There was an old fellow my dad used to look up to. He was a committee member and well-respected World War II vet. I always remember him as a super sensible, responsible man, and he was the first person to teach me how to take a 25-foot boat out to sea in the second highest tide in the world and find my way back to the river mouth, where I even did my first morning hook with tide coming in hard. He was a military man. At my young age, I could still see that. Anyway, one night at the annual regatta, we were setting off flares, and I was only a kid at the time. I joked about how it looked like a spaceship, and I noticed his face changed, and he looked me dead in the eyes and told me this. I've seen things in the ice many, many years ago when I was a young lad that scared me more than you can ever imagine. Things that shouldn't be here, things way beyond the imagination. I knew my dad said something about the old fella doing dangerous work in Antarctica in World War II, but this really freaked me out as he didn't drink and was not the type to come out with stuff like this. And the most scary part was when he said at the end, the alien bases were there in Antarctica for thousands of years under our noses and we are too primitive to see. This happened in the early 1990s to late 1980s and I loved this old man to bits. He was like a grandfather to me and a father to my dad and a war hero, and I would love to just go back to when I was a kid standing there at that regatta that night and ask him more. It's interesting to hear that for so many years, as far back as World War II, and I would say probably before then as well, we've known that aliens have existed there and that there's things going on in Antarctica that are otherworldly and are hidden away from us. Things that are hard for our human brains to comprehend, really. I think once you know that aliens exist, some people just don't really know how to deal with that. And especially if you've seen things that you just think are science fiction, really. So quickly, I do actually have the original article that my dad sent me. It is from 2017 and it's an Express article. It covers pretty much everything we've already covered, except I guess it goes into a lot less detail. It covers what Brian says and that he had flown over a no-fly zone, he has seen aliens, UFOs, a huge entrance hole to what he says is an alien base. It'd be interesting to know if this alien base is in Earth or is just completely underground. So this article notes about the silver discs he saw over the Transantarctic Mountains, but also that Brian has said there's a top secret collaboration between humans and aliens, with Antarctica a major research ground for the project, probably because it's so far out of public view. We just don't know what's going on in Antarctica. It talks about the hole in the ice and how the scientists disappeared and have never been heard from again. Apparently this is supposed to be a UFO crash which was found on Google Earth images. To those wondering if Brian is a genuine, Earth Files did actually publish a redacted DD-214 document and Antarctic Service Medal which was given to Brian on November 20th, 1984 to prove that he is genuine. And these claims have really sent huge ripples through UFO community. People have theorised that the Antarctic is such a mysterious place, and I think this really sort of proves it. This really sort of fuels the fire, essentially. I thought I'd put in some of the areas that Brian mentioned into Google Earth and see what comes up and see what we find. So here's the McMurdo station you can see. Obviously when you zoom in, you get these colour issues, which is because some are higher quality scans than others. These are the Transantarctic Mountains that they were talking about. This is where Brian reports seeing UFOs regularly in the same spot every time, so along this area here. According to Brian, the hole that he flew over is sort of around this area, and I mean, I had a zoom in and a bit of a look around, but I can't find anything. I mean, why would you put something on Google Maps that you don't want the public to know about? You just wouldn't do it. You just would not put it on Google Earth or Google Maps. You would just blur it over. So I mean, this whole area is just snow, a few blobs every now and again, snow, and that is about it, really. I mean, I found this blob, which at first I thought that's weird. Showed it to my dad and he was like, that's just an area that's not really been scanned properly or isn't higher quality than the rest of it. Same with bits like this. So there's McMurdo, and here is another station. Now this station isn't at all documented, but is meant to be right next to the hole essentially, and I mean, you can't see anything at all. It's all just allegedly just snow and ice, but right next to this area is where the hole is supposed to be, and I mean, I can't see anything. There's just nothing to look at. The other base that was mentioned is the Marie Byrd Land Station, where the scientists went to and disappeared, which just takes us to this place in the Netherlands, I think it is, or around the Netherlands. There is nothing to do with the camp in Antarctica. So a lot of these camps just aren't documented on Google Earth. You just can't find any of it, which isn't really a surprise, because why would they put it on Google Maps in the first place, or Google Earth, sorry, in the first place? I find it interesting to read about reports such as this, that there is so much more going on in this world than we realise, than the public realise. We've heard reports like this time and time again coming out, that aliens are on Earth and have been active on Earth for a very long time, probably thousands of years, that there are these bases on Earth, these UFO bases, that are well hidden and are confidential and are, top secret, that the military are aware of them, and that there are maybe experiments being conducted here, or that there is some sort of research agreement between humans and aliens that just isn't known about. What is certain though is that there is clearly something going on in Antarctica that we just don't know about, and that if you try to dig deeper into this, you just find the same reports coming out, that there are weird things going on in the Antarctic. And if you try to take a look on Google Earth at some of these things, you struggle to find anything, because it's all just snow and ice apparently. But again, why would the military show off all these UFO bases on Google Earth? They just wouldn't do that. They would just cover it up with snow and ice, I think. I found that a very interesting read, and I think it'd be good to do some more videos on aliens and unknown secrets of the world. Leave me a comment down below about what Brian, this ex-Navy flight engineer, allegedly saw in Antarctica. And the hole, what do you think the hole is? Do you think it's a secret UFO base? Do you think maybe it's an entrance into inner Earth? Let me know. I can't wait to read and reply to all of your comments. If you'd like to support the channel, please subscribe to Dare to Fly Today and get ready to take flight. Turn on notifications so you get notified every time I upload a video. Like and share this video with others. If you'd like to support the channel even further, you can make a one-off donation to my Ko-fi page, which will go towards buying me some rocket fuel for my ship. Or you can also support the channel via my PayPal, and links to both of those will be down below in the description box. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day wherever you are. Stay awake, stay blessed, and keep your eyes to the skies. Let me know if you see a UFO. And as always, fly high, fear less.